Hello, everyone. So today we're gonna take an overlook at the wall shop drawings. We're gonna see some main features. We're gonna take a look at how we can create the shop drawing settings, how to set up our sheet layout, and where is the layout directory. And then we're gonna set up a elevation view, a plan view, and then a framing cut list, just as an example. But the goal here is just to understand the process a little bit better, along with some workflow tips that I could give you guys. So I'm gonna jump in my project, and what we want to do first is set up our settings. So we're gonna come here to Drawings Operations, and then we're gonna click on Wall Drawings Manager. So if it's the first time that you're doing that in your project, this dialog box here will be empty. And this is the first important point. You have two ways of generating your settings. You can either create default settings with that option here at the bottom, or you can create settings from scratch. If you hit the little plus sign here, create new, you're gonna be starting settings from scratch. So the difference is that this is a starting point. If you click in this one, it will generate this guy here at the top, MWF shops 11 by 17. So if I double click in this one, you can see that we already have some views generated. We already have some sheet layouts. So we already have some settings here. But if you are using this option, it's still very important for you to go within each view and check the settings, because this is just, again, it's the starting point. It has some of the options here checked off for dimensions and labels, but it may not work for what you need in your project. So for example, if you need a specific dimension, or if you don't need, let's say, this dimension, you can uncheck, you can select other ones. So it is important to come in the view and check the settings that you have. So you want to customize this to what you actually need before you create your shop drawings. It is also very important, again, if you're using this default option, that you go especially in the framing cut list, because it comes along with some parameters already that you may not have. For example, if you are working only with standard panels. These two parameters here that we see, master container and label, they are only available if you have multi-layer MWF panels. So if you don't have those in your project, if you just use these settings out of the box and generate your drawings, your chances are you're going to get a warning or an error saying that it couldn't find these two parameters. And the reason why is because in your panels, you're not going to have those unless you have multi-layer panels in the project. So this is just an example of what could happen if you don't come in and change to what you need. So again, just like in the view settings, you can just delete what you don't need. You can add new parameters here from the list and so on. So this is still customizable. You can just go ahead and create new views if you want to. Let's say if you're not going to use some of these views here, you can delete them as well. So again, this is just a starting point, but it is very important to make sure that you are selecting the correct options for your project. And then the other option is just to click in the little plus sign. And in that case, everything will be empty. So you're gonna start creating from scratch. So this one here, for example, I created this previously, but as you can see, I did this from scratch. So I created all of these views. In this case here, I only generated, sorry, excuse me. I only generated sheet layouts for standard panels, because that's what I have in this project in particular. And in that case, you are going to go ahead and create everything from scratch by selecting the views from these tabs here. So after you decide which method you think is best for you, what you're going to do is you have to make sure to have sheets, have your views, and set up the layout directory. So I'm going to click on the little plus sign here. So let's go ahead and create a new one. And I'm going to name it as webinar. And I'm going to double click. So as you can see, I don't have anything just yet. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a sheet here for the standard tab. So I have these two separate tabs, and this is what is going to determine once I'm running shop drawings, what drawings will get generated for my standard panels, which ones will get generated for my multi-layer panels. So if you have both types in your project, the goal here is for you to be able to select any of them. And it doesn't really matter if they are standard or multi-layer, because you already set this up beforehand, and the software will know which drawing to generate depending if it's a standard or multi-layer panel. So again, on my case here, in this example, I only have standard panels. So I can just go ahead and create one sheet just for my standard panels and hit OK. And then I do have to set the layout directory. This is very important, especially if you're starting the project or if you are opening the project in another computer. It's always a good idea, even if you think it's set up, it's always a good idea to just double check. So for whoever for people that have the new MWF, so that would be 8221 or higher, then the folder will be located in program data. So it's not going to be in program files anymore. So the path that you have to point out is your C drive, program data, Structsoft Solutions, your Revit year. On my case, is 2023. Shop drawings, walls, imperial or metric if you're using metric, and then sheet layouts. So this is the folder you're going to use. In case you want to use your custom sheet layouts, you're going to save them here. If not, you can just use the out-of-the-box ones that we have. If you want to check what you have in that specific folder, you can select the second option here, sheet layout directory, and you will be able to see the files here that you have saved in this folder. And as you can see, this is the other thing that is very important. This is not just a title block, it's a Revit project. It's not a family. And we need the title block to be within this project with the zones where the views will get applied in order to generate the joints. So if you have your own title block, your custom title block, what you can do is you can maybe take one of these as a template. You can open up this file and just place your title block there. So let me just quickly show you how to do that. So let me close this. And it doesn't let me click OK unless I have a view assigned to the sheet. So I'm going to just quickly create a view here. So since we're going to go back and start creating our views, let's go ahead and create the elevation view. So I'm going to click on the View tab, Elevation View, and Elevation View. I'm going to give a name. So for now, I'm not going to worry about the settings just yet. I'm just going to click OK, just so I can assign a view to my sheet layout. So I'm going to take this 11 by 17. As you can see, it updates with the zone specifically for that specific sheet that I have, and I'm going to assign the elevation view for now and just click OK. So let's take a look at where and how we can change those sheet layouts that we were talking about. So I'm going to come here to my C drive, program data, Structsoft Solutions, my Revit year, shop drawings, walls, imperial, and sheet layouts. And I'm going to open up this 11 by 17 here. Okay, so this is what it would look like. So this is the title block. This is our custom title block. So if, our default title block. So if you have your custom title block, what you want to do is just bring it in this file. You can delete this one and just place your custom title block. The other option is just to modify this one and just add your information. And then from there, you can also modify those zones. So this is where the views will get placed. That's why we have those. So it's just a template of where each view should go. So you don't have to keep rearranging the views after the drawing creation. And you can also customize this. You could delete the views that you don't need, for example. You can move them. You can change the sizes. So for example, if I select one of them, the width and the height parameters will be here on the side. So you could just modify this and it will modify the size of that zone specifically. And as you can see, you have a name for each one of them. So it is a good idea to just assign the name so you would know which view will go where. For example, elevation, I know that I'm going to assign my elevation to that zone. We could change this to plan view, for example. Plan view. So I will know that at this bottom view, I'm going to assign my plan view. Here in the upper left zone, we could say that this will be the one that will get our bill of material, and so on. So you could modify this. And after you are done, you can just go ahead and save this in the same folder. So we're gonna come here and save. Again, we have to save it as a project. And I'm going to call this webinar 2. We have webinar 1 from the morning webinar. Okay, this one will be webinar 2 and hit save. Okay, so now this is all done. So I'm gonna close and go back to my project. And we're gonna go back to our settings. I'm sorry guys if I'm coughing a little bit. I am a little bit under the weather, so I apologize for that in advance. Okay, let's go to webinar. So if I go back to my sheet, I will see that now I have that new option in the pull down. So if I come here to the drop down, I have my webinar 2 option, and I can go ahead and use this one. Sometimes we did delete some of these zones, and I also renamed the plan view, as you can see here, and also the upper left zone. This was renamed as well. So sometimes it's not going to update right away. It could happen. So if that happens, just click OK. Exit out of the settings and go back in. And then it will update. As you can see here, now it's updated. So now I have elevation view, my plan view, and my bill of material. So this is all good. So now let's go ahead and go back in the elevation view. So now we're going to actually set this up. Again, as I mentioned, you have a lot of options here for dimensions. So you're not gonna use all of that, but you can choose which ones you think are important or which ones you usually use in your project. We could start with using, for example, a left elevation height. We would want to know probably also the length of that panel, so we can choose this one, top elevation length. We would also want to know the distance between studs, so the spacing between the studs. So we could use maybe this one. Let's see here, bottom structural member length. And if we have openings, maybe, excuse me, something for the openings. Let's say the right elevation opening height. Okay, so what I did here, we have one dimension for each side. We have at the left the height, top, the length, at the bottom from stud to stud, and then we have the openings at our right. Sorry, guys. Okay, so now we're gonna jump in the labels. So for the labels, you have to be also very careful. This is another very important topic. You have to make sure that you are selecting the same method for the view and for your schedule. So we have a lot of options, too many to cover in one webinar, but I would say that the main one is this one, label members by method, and within this one we have 5 methods that we can choose from to label the members. The other main option would be to use Revit Smart Tags, and in that case we have that option within the view settings to use the Smart Tags. And in that case, in this case, you just have to load in the Revit Smart Tags. You're gonna choose them from here in view settings, Smart Tags. So these are the main options. This third one, it's very automated. It doesn't allow you to modify anything or to look at specific parameters, so I wouldn't use this one. I would stick to the first one here for the structural framing. Okay, so now we're gonna jump in the view settings. And the first important settings that we see here is the view orientation. So interior to exterior, exterior to interior. So this means that if I am checking off, by default, it's gonna be the first one, interior to exterior. So it means that I'm seeing my elevation view from the interior side of the wall. So this is referring the Revit wall itself, these two. So if I change to this one, I am pretty much just mirroring the view. I'm looking from the opposite side of the wall. And the third one that we see here, panel direction, will follow always your panel direction. So in that case, it doesn't matter what side of the wall it is, it will always follow the panel direction itself. So the view will be oriented always from left to right. Your panel direction will always be from left to right in your elevation view once you generate the shop drawings. So we're gonna leave to the first one, and just make sure also to use the same throughout the other views. So if you do want the plan view and the elevation view to be aligning, then you have to make sure that the orientation is the same. So if you change to exterior, you want to do the same once you go ahead to create the plan view. Okay, so this portion here is just the insertion point in the sheet layout itself. So we can choose this from mid-center and mid-center. If you have a different configuration and you're not sure, you can set it to mid-center and see what it looks like, and then go back and rearrange this if needed. And then we have the viewport type, which is just the title of that view in the sheet layout. So in that case, if you don't want to create any titles, you can choose no title. If you choose title with line and you write something here, so let's say, oops, elevation. So the name here will override the regular name, that if I don't have anything here, it would just pick up the name that I gave to that specific view. So it will read in the drawings the prefix, which is this one behind. So the prefix right now is MWF. You could choose something else here, dash elevation view. So that would be the default naming convention that you're going to see if you don't have anything written here. Now, if you do have elevation written here or whatever it is that is written here, then it will override and it will create the title only with that elevation that we see here, with that name. So the other important thing is that you can assign a view template to your views. And it's a Revit view template, so you can create that beforehand and just assign it here. And this will save you a little bit of time when it comes to setting up the detail, visual style, and scale. So you can set this up beforehand using your Revit view template. If you don't want to use a Revit view template, you can just set it up here. Fine. Let's say shading with edges, and I'm going to set up the scale as well. Now this other section here, the layer selection, will be important only if you have multi-layer panels in your project. If you are dealing only with standard MWF panels, you don't have to worry about this because it will already just create a view for the framing, for the structural layer. But if you do have multi-layer, you can select which of the layers you want to see. So if we are in this webinar, we are creating the drawings for the framing. So in that case, we want to see only the structure. We don't want to see any sheeting for now or anything like that. The goal here would be to create separate drawings for each layer of your wall. So in that case, you can choose by the layer function, or if you have too many layers in your wall, you could just go by index. The 0 option here being the structural layer. But again, for this example here, it doesn't really matter because I only have standard panels, so it will just create for the structure anyways. The other thing that is important to note is that MWF will hide everything that is not a structural framing or structural column. So the goal is also, again, just to show the framing itself. So that's why once you create, by default, any door, window, or even the wall, everything will be hidden by default. So you can see only the framing. Sometimes we do want to see some elements. So in that case, you can come here to visible categories and just turn on whatever you want to see. So let's say if you do want to see the doors and windows, you can scroll down here and find doors and then the windows as well. And if you go ahead and create the drawings, you would see them in the views. If not, they're gonna be hidden. If you do want to see the wall, then you have to check off this option here at the bottom. Okay. So these are the main settings. And again, it's pretty much the same for each view. So I'm taking the elevation view as the main example here because it's the most complete view. The other ones, they're gonna have these options or a little less. So as long as you understand the concept, you are able to generate any type of view that you may need, maybe side view, reflected ceiling view, and so on. So once we're done with the viewport, we're gonna jump in the dimensions tab. So here we selected the dimensions we want to use, and here we're going to set up what is the dimension style we want to use. And this is just a list of dimension types that I have in my Revit project. So this is Revit. If you want a new type, you can just duplicate, create a new one. You can also modify. And whatever you have in your Revit file, it will show up here in the pull down. So let me just assign the same one. Okay. And then this option here, the offset, is just in case you have 2 dimensions or more at the same side. So sometimes it could be overlapping. So this offset is an offset from the view itself to the dimension string. So in that case, if we have two dimensions at the same side, you may want to add an offset to one of them. So it's a little bit further away, so you have enough space to place both dimensions on the same side. And then when I pick that dimension, the structural member dimension, this is the dimension from stud to stud. So in that case, I have to pick a reference, and this is in relation to the stud itself. So am I referring the left side of the stud, or am I referring always the center of the studs, or the right? Or I could just specify and say that it's always going to be referring the open face of my stud or the web. So let's say the website. And then I'm going to jump in labels. So for the label, again, as I mentioned, we have 5 methods that you can choose from. Today, we're going to use by schedule label, which I think is the most common one. You have to make sure that you're using the same in your schedules. So this by schedule label is referring the BMSF schedule label parameter. And that's that parameter that we don't have it out of the box. You have to run member distribution to have those in your panel elements. So I'm choosing here that method by schedule label. And then once we go ahead to create the schedule, I have to refer to that same one, okay? So let me just do a little side note here. The BMSF schedule label, the way it labels it is that it generates that parameter that I mentioned. And that parameter, where does it take the information from? It's taking the information from a text file that is also in your installation folder. So if I come back in here on my C drive. And in this case, it's going to be back to program files. So it's still in program files, Structsoft Solutions, your Revit year, commands, 2023, MWF, and config. And it's going to be this guy here, tag mapping. So every time you're using the BMSF schedule label, this is where it's getting the information from. It relates to the description of the member. So SV is the description for my vertical studs. T-top is the description for my top track, and so on. So it's saying that my SV, every time I have a vertical stud, it will label it with S. My top tracks will always get labeled with T, and so on. So if I do want to change this letter, I can. Let's say we're going to label all of our studs as A. Let's say that the end stud will also be A, so I have to find the EV description, EV. Gonna change it to A, oops. And let's say top and bottom track, we're gonna change it to B. Just as an example. And we're gonna click save. So I'm telling the tag mapping and the settings that every time I have top track, it's going to be labeled as B. Every time I have a stud, it's going to be labeled as A, and so on. So that's following the description. So again, if I were to, let me just hit OK here for a second. If I were to take this stud here, for example, the description is here as V. So this is a stud that will be labeled as A right now once I run shop drawings. Now the number will be the same if my description is the same and if the length is the same. So if I have 10 studs and they are all the same length, they're gonna all be A, and then the number starts usually with 0 and goes 1, 2, 3, and so on. If I have, let's say, one stud that is a different length, then it will be A again because it is a stud, but then a different number. So with that option, you can group identical elements together if they are the same description and same length. So that's the goal when you use BMSF schedule label. Again, right now, for example, for this panel, I don't have anything here. So we have to remember that it's an extra step that we have to take. You can either run member distribution under output, or if we go back to the settings, we have that same option within the shop drawing settings in the miscellaneous settings tab here. So once I check off this option to run distribution, it will run distribution to populate that parameter in my members and create the drawings at the same time. So it saves you one regeneration time of your panels. So I would use this one to do everything in one shot. Okay, so now we're gonna go back and just quickly create a plan view. So let's say floor plan view. Plan view. And then the same, I'm going to just select one dimension here. I don't have a way of labeling the plan view. So we're gonna jump in the settings, and they are exactly the same as the elevation view. So I'm gonna set this to mid-center. I'm going to set this up because I don't have a Revit view template. And again, if it is a multi-layer panel, since it's a plan view, you could just check all of them. You could just see the all the layers if you want. The difference between the elevation view and this view is that you can set up the cut plane and the clipping height. So where exactly at what height you're cutting, and where is your view going through? Is it all the way to the bottom of the panel, or is it stopping at a specific location? And then let me just set this to the same dimension style. And now we're going to create the framing cut list. So we do have several methods. And again, it's going to depend on the person. This custom BOM here, it will create just an elevation, a view. It will just create a view. It's not going to be an actual schedule. Within this option, we have the ability to add totals. With this one, we don't. And that's why I prefer the third option, which is using a Revit schedule. So when you choose to use a Revit schedule, you're going to be using this custom schedule option just to duplicate your existing Revit schedule. And then you would end up with a main schedule that it goes overall your entire project. And once you create the drawings with MWF, you would have the same schedule with the same parameters, but then in a per panel basis. So you're going to have separate schedules in that case. So I think that's the best option because of that, because you can have as much control as you can get with the Revit schedules. You could have a main schedule with all the information for the entire project. And once you run shop drawings, you would get the schedules per panel as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit OK for now. And we're going to come here to the schedules because I've created already a Revit schedule here, and we're going to be using this one. So it's just to show you. And again, you have to just make sure you are selecting the parameters that you need. In this case, I've added BIMSF container just to filter out the MWF panels. Then I've added the BIMSF schedule label, which is the same parameter that we're using to label the elevation view. Then we have type, reported length, weight, and count. So very simple. You would have to set up some filters here as well to filter out anything that maybe doesn't have a schedule label just yet. If you have sheeting as well, and you don't want to see the sheeting in that specific schedule, you can remove anything that starts with SH, which is usually the label for sheeting. And you can group and add totals here as well, let's say for the weight. So this is all Revit. And once you're done, so this is for my entire project. So what I'm going to do is come back here to my manager, my drawings view, and we're going to go ahead and create a schedule with this custom schedule option. So this is the one that will allow us to just duplicate the existing Revit schedule that we already have. So I'm just going to give it a name, framing Cutlist. We're going to come here to view settings. The only thing you need to set up is the view insertion point. So we're going to set this to top left since it's going to be at the upper left side of my sheet layout. And then here we're simply going to click to duplicate existing schedule and just select that same one, master framing cut list, and hit OK. Perfect. So now we have these three main views. We're going to go back to our sheet and just assign them. I already have the elevation view, so I only need to assign the plan view here and the cut list, the framing cut list here. And we are pretty much done. So I'm going to click OK and close. Let me close this one. And now let's go ahead and select a panel and run shop drawings. So we're going to use this one, webinar, and hit OK. So at this point, if you get any errors, chances are that it could be maybe the path that you need to set up for the sheet layout. Sometimes if you have some parameters that are not existing in that specific panel, you're going to get some warnings as well. Usually when the error is related to parameters missing or dimension style missing, the drawing will still get generated. It's just that that particular parameter or dimension style will not be in the drawing. So the other thing that is important is to make sure to transfer project standards if you are importing an existing shop drawing settings, especially if you're getting warnings about the dimension style, for example. The dimension style is nothing but your dimension type that is within your Revit project. So if you couldn't find it, it means that you don't have it either because you probably maybe deleted by accident, or because you're using existing shop drawing settings from a previous project and maybe you didn't import those dimension types into the new project. So those are the usual warnings that we get. Okay, so this panel is 136. So it's here. Okay. Okay, so this is what it would look like. So we're gonna have the schedule, and again, so this is an actual Revit schedule. So in case you need to modify something afterwards, you can. You could come here and just modify. We have the totals. If we look at the elevation here, I have my labels. As you can see, it labeled my studs and studs as A. They are the same length, so the number is the same. And this is the elevation view. So sometimes it will be a little, you may have to move this a little, or again, as I mentioned, if you want to turn this off, you can as well in the settings. And that's pretty much it. So let's take a look and see if we have any questions.
Guys, thank you for your demonstration. And as she's mentioned, we'll open the floor for any of your questions. And once again, you can either type them and send them to us, or you can raise your hand and we shall unmute you in case you would like to speak. Also, in the meantime, as we wait for your questions to come in, I'd like to invite you to visit our LinkedIn channel at linkedin.com/company/StruxSoftSolutions, where you can find regularly uploaded content, and also where you can review the recorded version of this webinar. See that a hand has been raised, so I shall unmute you in just a moment.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, hi.
Hi, this is Lethan Hanlon of Engineer.
Hi,
I have a question. Hi, I have a question regarding the kind of the navigation between plan and elevation, right? So I've seen this process a few times now. Just wondering, just get your insight. Like, if you've got like a complicated project, say it's an airport and with many walls, and you've produced all these like hundreds of shop elevations, is there a way that you would recommend? So when you set up like a plan and you've got your panel numbers on the plan, you can imagine there's so many elevations, you have to keep looking to the plan. If you were to give a deliverable that's someone using in the field, like on a tablet, is there any suggested methods you would use to navigate from, say, a plan to an elevation, like using like a hyperlink or something, and then back, so you can kind of efficiently navigate the set? Because obviously I'm conscious of the fact that we've got so many drawings, and it's kind of like, you know, digesting them and kind of moving around when in the field. Is there any kind of proven strategies you have for that that you've looked into at the moment?
Let me think. Okay, so you mean, let's say we are at panel 136 here, right, in the shop drawing. So you mean an easy way for you to be able to find that out in your actual plan view? Would that be
correct? Yeah. So if you had like, if you issued a set and you had like the master plan, key plan, and then you had like hundreds of those elevation drawings, is there like a quick navigation tool that you've come across that allows you to kind of navigate the set more intelligently?
I see. Well, we do have an option if you'd like to create along with the drawing. It creates an overall plan view that shows you in red where that panel is in relation to the entire project. Now, the downside with that is that you don't really see the labels and the names. It just points out where that panel is, and it helps a little bit, but it's not like smart, I would say. It's just a view, and it just points out that, oh, there is your panel in the plan view. The other option would be, I think we had a way of, I think it, excuse me, it would be with Revit actually. I've seen people using a Dynamo with some to help out with some things. I'm not sure if it would help in that case.
Yeah, I mean, we're exploring things like that. I just wondered if it was anything out of the box that I've overlooked and not been aware of. Yeah, but we're very much we're looking into that now. We're kind of like we're like, you know, we continue to explore, but it's very possible. But maybe another tool. I mean, I'm thinking of Bluebeam as well, where you can actually embed hyperlinks, or you can hyperlink drawings, a set of drawings.
Yeah.
That's one option. But yeah, I just wondered if there's anything that you've already thought of, you guys, and it's available, but we're not just seeing it.
Yeah, no, I think for now, excuse me, for now, within MWF, the only option is that one that I mentioned is the project plan view. So this one. So if you create that along, it will, you could maybe put it here. It would indicate where it is, but it's not going to be as smart. I think like the hyperlink would be even better in that case. But yeah, that would be the option that we have for now.
Well, that's great. I didn't know about the project plan view, so definitely we'll check that out because that obviously will help, definitely help
okay.
the matters. Thank you.
No problem, no problem.
All right, were there any other questions from the audience? We're going to wait a few more seconds to see if any last minute questions happen to pop in. Right, that looks like a wrap for today. In case you had any follow-up questions, do feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details will be included in an email along with the recording of today's session tomorrow via email. Additionally, if you would like to set up a one-on-one demonstration or a training with one of our product experts, we will be happy to do so as well. And that's the end of this webinar. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we do hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.